You are listening to Unity in Our Community on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Today I have a really special guest, Rhys from Screen Alliance Wales, and we are talking all about Valleyward, the amazing film industry in South Wales. So now we'll go into the first part of that interview and we'll be back after this. Thank you so much for joining us on Unity in Our Community radio show. How are you doing, Rhys from Screen Alliance Wales?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Yes, I think as it is today, we're starting on the first 5-day week we seem to have had in ages with all these bank holidays. It's sort of it's a bit of
a bit of a shock.
To think actually, it's Tuesday and there's another 3 days sort of after today. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So, what's happening in the world of the Valleyward? That's what I'm telling everybody. It's called Valleyward, okay? Because there's so much going on.
It is quite exciting time in sort of the last few years. I think we've seen the kind of the positive impact of projects coming to South Wales. Going back, I suppose the legacy of Doctor Who, things like that coming back in 2005, and so at the time you've now then got Casualty rebasing to Wales, and we now got the studio facilities as was Pinewood. It's now Serena Studios, and we've had sort of Sherlock and things being filmed there. A couple of films, and sort of most recently Tom Hardy was down there last year. And then you've got Wolf Studios, who've got the home of Bad Wolf, which has been sort of responsible for TV series like A Discovery of Witches, His Dark Materials, big high-end TV projects. And I think there's like that positive vibe. The production companies are appreciating the fact of what South Wales can offer. In terms of like locations, you go to film in a studio in London, you travel for 30 miles and you're still in London. Whereas if you're based in Cardiff, Bridgend, or anywhere in the South Wales area, you kind of like you travel 30 miles. You could be on a coastal, lovely sort of sandy beach. You could be on a rocky bit of coastline. You can be up in the Banau Brycheiniog, sort of woodland out in Monmouthshire. You've got sort of all these sort of diverse places, and within sort of which is great from a filming perspective. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I don't think people realise how much goes on in the film business in South Wales.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the places where we come in, is the fact that the industry is by its nature secretive. It's about sort of, I suppose like 2 years ago they were filming Willow over in Bridgend, and you weren't allowed to say that Willow was being filmed there, even though Disney would put out press releases saying that they were filming at Dragon Studios in Bridgend. There were other things saying that they were filming Willow in Wales, but they would never put the two bits of information in one article, and you couldn't be, we'd have to sign documents to say that we couldn't say what's happening here. Technically there's limitations of what I can say. It's actually filming at Wolf Studios at the moment, but I think even most cursory search on Twitter would yield a whole host of information about what's filming, who's actually starring in it, and a lot of it comes out and sort of with the thing. And I think sort of there's plenty of information out there, but then that makes it a bit, because of that secrecy involved with production, it does put a slight hurdle for when people are looking to get into the industry, because it is kind of like there's people living like, and this is on their doorstep and they don't know about it, which is a key part of what we do at Screen Alliance Wales, is trying to sort of get over that sort of to try and welcome people into the industry.
Yeah.
At the same time, when there is this kind of shroud over it to a certain extent.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, I guess if you're dealing with like high-end celebrity actors, there is a certain security thing that, and also I guess, I understand that, like, if you've got, there is a little bit of secrecy around it, but from a kind of crew point of view and production point of view, obviously you guys, I see that you're making so much effort to reach out to communities, and different communities to try and encourage people into this brilliant industry, which is right here in Wales, creating so many jobs, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it is just trying to reach out, and I think that's kind of like the diverse nature of my job on a day-to-day basis is the fact that um, partly it's about the people who already want to know they know they want to work in the industry, and it's about giving them some ideas about different pathways. Some people, I think, education careers guidance tends to be very linear. There's a kind of like you do this, you do get these subjects, you go to university and things like that. Whereas the reality is in the industry, like, we get people wanting to be directors. And one of the workshops I do is like we go on the top 10 directors off IMDb
Yeah.
and find what their first credits are. So you've got
Yeah.
people like Frank Darabont who directed Shawshank Redemption. His first thing was in set design, set dressing, and script writing. And then you got people like Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood. They were actors. So there's the pathway to becoming a director is as one example is very convoluted. So it's trying to give people the imagination to not think that taking a certain job is a kind of backward step or not on the right path, because you have to follow
Yeah.
your own path.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree actually, because I was saying to somebody very recently, it's like you just got to get your foot in the door and then you can explore, then you start to meet people. And one thing always leads to another. My brother works in film and I probably should interview him actually, just thinking now, because his pathway into it was, he was a chaperone. Well, he was an actor when he was
Yeah.
younger and then he was a chaperone. And then he's
Yeah.
gone over into production. You don't have to have a film degree or, a certain degree.
I mean, it's sometimes one of the things which I've had this discussion with people recently. We make an effort that to try and ensure that anybody who applies for a job with us, that we do give them feedback.
Yeah.
And one of the things is sometimes people tend to get, it sounds derogatory, but they're fixated on all the things they've done related to the industry. And I'm trying to say, well, have you done like a hospitality job? Have you worked in a coffee shop? And they go, why? Why is that important? Well, the reality is that those skills are really highly valued within the industry. If you're able to deal with RC members of the public, then there might be sort of say that you might be able to sort of like,
Yeah.
if you come across a prima donna on set, you've got that kind of natural skill set, to
Yeah.
deal with people, to organize things, working behind as a barista. So like all sorts of different things, that there's a multitude of jobs that go along with sticking a mug under a machine. There's a whole host of the complexity to it. And it's the same thing here. It's like, particularly like, if you come in as an office assistant or a runner sort of thing, you just do a little bit of everything. And is that adaptability that is important?
And quite exciting, I think. It's not a, repetitive, laborious job. Like you say, it's like every day is different and you've got to kind of just use your own initiative and use all those transferable skills. We had Change Your Focus on the show, and they were doing like a similar, I'm sure you know them, thing with, I think it's Working Wales, but it's interesting. They were talking all about the transferable skills, and I've been having these conversations as well. And it's funny enough, when you start out and you're doing your first jobs, say you're working in a bar or you're working in a restaurant, whatever, you don't necessarily know what you're learning at the time. And you might just be in that job thinking, oh, I'm just a bar person, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. But like for me, as I've got older, I've looked back and I've got, oh, I learned so much from that. And that's what I was saying to my son. I was like, you don't really know what you're learning because you're learning so many different skills, and I guess you guys are kind of like putting the puzzle together for people, by saying you don't necessarily have to have, like, asking that question, have you worked at a bar? Like somebody might think, why are you asking me that? But but
Yeah. And I think it's another thing is that are trying to get away from the obviously you do get jobs that pay more than others, but I think it's one of the things that we kind of do to educate people to try and think is that not to think in terms of hierarchy of jobs as such, because every job is intrinsically important into the part of the production.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that sort of, I know people who have been, and they've kind of they feel as if get bored when it's their job to stand outside the studio when they're filming to make sure nobody goes into the door. But that seems obviously in itself is it's not a creative task, but the implications of somebody walking in when that red light is on, you're talking potentially up to thousands, if not more, if it cost it in terms of the cost of somebody walking in and hitting a take, particularly at the end of the day, and it means you knock on to sort of something, the shot's not being completed in a day, and so even those sort of really kind of sort of low level jobs are really important to a production. It's also the fact that kind of it's so much of the time sort of one of the pieces of guidance. I don't know if you have to edit this out, but it's sort of don't be. Is it such a vital bit of information, because it's so much of the time it's that kind of so many people who have thought they were in a higher position they were, and then they find that some junior person who they were quite rude to is 2 years down the line is now their kind of line manager, and sort of because of the nature of things going on. So it pays to kind of be nice to people.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the same in other industries as well, because you kind of you never know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I love the atmosphere on the film set because everybody is bringing their best. It's like same as a music studio, like everybody's bringing their best to the work, and there's that real team. Just, I don't know how to describe it, like at the end, like everyone's crying, so like leaving everybody, and they might not see each other again,
It is. You do get that kind of really intense thing, because obviously where we are, we're kind of like on the work more closely production, so we're kind of here for the long term. We see when the studio goes really quiet in between productions, we see it ramp it up, and then sort of like all of a sudden it's kind of like all of a sudden some days it's just me parking my bike in the bike shed, and all of a sudden there's like 15 in there, and it's when you're coming in, and you just see these changes. But it's when you get invited to the wrap parties, and you just see the kind of it's people have spent 6 months, and I think for the nature of the job, you do get these kind of longer days, and I think you do get you do spend a lot of time with people. And you do get that kind of a slight family vibe to it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it comes through. So, yeah.
You are listening to Unity in Our Community on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.